is the Bruce Pearl loathing or envying, whatever the case may be with Tennessee's fan base, over? Is this just another SEC game now? Your thoughts?
You broke up on me. I think you were asking if the Bruce Pearl situation is the same as it was a few years ago. I still think there are a lot of Tennessee fans that look at Bruce Pearl and don't like him, and by golly, they want to make sure they beat him. I do think with some other, now he does have a lot of folks in Knoxville that like him for what he did in boosting this program over about a 6-year period. I think there is still some animosity. I don't think it's what it was, but I think it's still. And oh, by the way, it wasn't long ago when a booster asked me, what is Bruce Pearl's record against Rick Barnes lately? Well, Pearl's 7-2 in the last 9 games against Barnes. That still resonates with some Tennessee fans, not all, but some. The game earliest sellouts. I think that also speaks to focus on Bruce Pearl. Maybe not to the level it used to be, but it's still there.
Dave, were you going to ask me? You wanted me to
go. Sorry.
Yeah, I think there was. I think it depended on the age range of Tennessee fans. I think a lot of younger fans really wanted Pearl back. As I'm sure you guys both remember, there was the letter written asking Dave Hart to fire Conzo Martin when he was in the midst of trying to get Tennessee to the NCAA tournament when Bruce Pearl was there, and rehire Bruce Pearl. You guys could speak more to this. A part of me feels that Bruce Pearl was somewhat behind that. I have no proof, but I'm not going to pretend I have proof, but I've always believed that myself. And the other thing is that I think it did. I think Barnes losing to Pearl the way he has made fans miss aspects of Pearl to a certain degree. But I also think there's the fact that even though I think Bruce Pearl's a good coach, he's not the same splash he was in the SEC. I think when Bruce Pearl came to the SEC and introduced that flex offense with the press on every made basket, up tempo, nobody in the SEC was running that. A lot of teams are running it now. So he's not as ahead of the curve in the SEC as he was when he took over at Tennessee nearly 20 years ago.
Jimmy, along those lines, I think that the fact that Tennessee's program has been good under Rick Barnes kind of makes it easier to forget about Bruce Pearl. Had Tennessee still been going through all the mess they went through with Conzo and Tyndall, I think that you would have probably had some people that still wanted Bruce back or disliked him. But Tennessee's success, I think, has quelled that a bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think there's some Tennessee fans, though, that will point to this. Pearl got Auburn to the Final Four, and Tennessee has still never been to a Final Four. So there's still some of that out there. But the success that Tennessee has had, the fact that they have been a relatively high seed in the NCAA tournament in recent years, the fact that they're number 2 seed right now and might play their way into a 1 seed, they're ranked number 4 in the country. All that success, I agree with you, Dave, has taken a little bit of the angst off of the Bruce Pearl situation. So, yeah, that is true. And Barnes has done a very good job with this program. There's no doubt about that. They're winning at a high level. I will say this, and I do think Caleb's right. Pearl didn't have quite the splash when he was at Tennessee. But at Auburn, boy, he has made it tough to win there. He's got the jungle. He's got the students there. They sell out. He's done a terrific job at Auburn in generating interest there. But I don't think it's still pretty darn good what he's done at Auburn.
Yeah, so Jimmy, along those lines, you're right. He did have the Final Four run at Auburn. Do you think one of the things that may make fans at Tennessee miss Pearl to a degree is just the clash of styles still? I mean, look, we know that Rick Barnes is a grinded out. I mean, they both run the flex offense to a degree, but Rick Barnes is a grinded out defense first type of coach. Still loves to play inside out. And I mean, Pearl's never deviated from the fact that even though he's recruited a lot more bigs at Auburn than he had at Tennessee, he still never really deviated from he wants to run tempo. He wants to press. And and Rick Barnes relies on the mid range after running offenses. Bruce Pearl has just totally chucked the mid range and doesn't care about it. And so, do you think that's part of what may have people missing Bruce Pearl is the fact that what Tennessee has had since him has just the brand of basketball hasn't been as exciting, even if it's winning.
Yeah, I think to a large degree that's true. I don't think the style has been quite as excited. Now, having said that, this year I do think Barnes has taken the reins off a little bit. Exciting offensive, jacked up a lot of threes during the Pearl tenure. It seemed like defense was, it's not optional. If you don't play defense, you don't get on the court. But I think with Kennett and Ziegler, what Adu's been able to do, some other guys that have come into the fold, I think the Tennessee offense is much better now than in many of the years that Rick Barnes was early in his tenure. And I think I'm right about this. I think Tennessee's offense and defense ranks in the top 20 or top 25 in the Ken Pomeroy stats. Caleb, there have been years where Tennessee's defense ranked in the top 5 and the offense ranked around 80. That's not the case this year. So I do think they're better offensively, but I don't think it's quite as offensively as exciting as what Bruce Pearl brought to. And here's the other part too. When Pearl came in, Tennessee fans were starved for success. The players were starved for success. I remember Dane Bradshaw saying when Pearl came in, they'd have listened and bought into anything he said because they were tired of losing. And so he showed what could be done at Tennessee. And then Rick Barnes has continued that, even though there were a couple of bumps in the road before he got here. He's continued that, but he's done it in a different way and a brand of basketball that, quite frankly, isn't quite as exciting as what Pearl brought to the table.
I'm going to ask you guys both a question because I almost feel like we're saying two different things. I feel like Caleb on one end is there are fans that are still a little envious of Auburn having Pearl, and they would love in some sort of weird scenario for Pearl to come back. Whereas Jimmy's saying there are a lot of fans that don't like Pearl because of what went down with the NCAA and Tennessee. So what percentage, Jimmy, I'll start with you, do you think, A, think it's just another SEC game, B, dislike Pearl because of what happened, or C, kind of a little envious that he's still not Tennessee's coach? I'll let you mull over that while I'll tell you portions of the program brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. HOOKED for 10% off. How would you break down the fan base, Jimmy?
I think there are about 20% that are envious of the success that Pearl has had and the fact that he's had Barnes's number and the fact that he got Auburn to a Final Four. I think there are about at least 60% that really like Barnes and they're ready to forget Bruce Pearl. That leaves the other 20%. So that would be, and that's obviously not scientific, but it's just kind of the feedback
Right.
I get from people. Look, when he comes back to Knoxville, I mean, there are a lot of folks that rally around him and they try to get together with him, and he might have a dinner or something. But he does have a certain faction of fans here, and some of them are boosters that are glad to see him when he comes back, and he's kept ties with them. And I think the world of Rick Barnes. Bruce has more of a, should we say, magnetic personality, and he's a little bit more outgoing. Barnes is. I don't see Rick Barnes going out with the student section and buying them a bunch of pizza and jumping on the table and having an impromptu pep rally. That's what Bruce Pearl did. So he ingratiated himself to the students, to the fans, to many people with some of his antics. Not all of them were bad. Just that was the way he did things, promoting.
Interesting. I like your percentage. I would agree with that. It's the 60-20-20. I think most fans are just this is another game. You know that it's Bruce Pearl, but it's not, oh, you got to get back at Bruce Pearl, or, oh, I wish he was the coach anymore. Caleb?
I'm actually with you guys on that. I think it's 60-20-20. I think it was 60-40 when Pearl was hired at Auburn. I'm going to be honest. When Pearl was hired and Conzo Martin was at Tennessee, I think it was 60-40 in favor of Pearl during that time. And you know, a lot of me, I'm not saying Konzo was the best coach, but I felt horrible for him during that time because I thought he did as good of a job as possible under the circumstances. I don't know if he would have lasted. I thought he was a good guy. And so that was just a really, really bad situation. But you're right. Now it is 60, 20, 20. I mean, I totally agree. I think it also helps too that even if you're not crazy about the brand of basketball, I mean, Pearl ingratiated himself with the community, but Rick Barnes doesn't have to do that because Rick Barnes kind of is the community. I mean, he's from Western North Carolina. Like, I feel like culturally, Rick Barnes is just a fit for East Tennessee as a guy. So I think he feels much more. I think Rick Barnes feels plenty at home in Tennessee. Now, Buzz Peterson was also culturally a fit for East Tennessee because he was from Western North Carolina. He just couldn't coach worth a lick. So,
Jimmy,
it was a cultural fit, not a coaching fit.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, when he said, I still remember him sending Vincent Yarborough crying from the practice court. I'm like, I know you want to make a point, but does he have to really cry, or what does that say about Vincent? I don't know. That was a very odd time.